Shadows over Bulgaria, a journey into darkness. The invitation came as a faded postcard signed with a name Alexander had never heard, a message promising secrets buried in the heart of Bulgaria. With a mixture of trepidation and insatiable curiosity, he embarked on a journey from his mundane life into a land of myth and ancient sorrow. Alexander's mind teemed with questions. What dark legends lurked behind the towering Balkan peaks? What secret history had been left behind in the abandoned villages and crumbling monasteries? Unbeknownst to him, fate was guiding his steps toward a nightmare that had been waiting centuries to be awakened. As Alexander's bus rumbled along the winding mountain road, the landscape morphed from modern highways into a patchwork of shadowed forests and forgotten hamlets. The late autumn chill seeped through the bus's thin walls, carrying with it the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Outside, the sky was a bruised palette of gray and purple, and the ancient stone bridges and weathered signposts hinted at stories lost in time. Stepping off at a small station in the foothills near Plovdiv, Alexander felt as if he had stepped into another world. The station, a relic of the communist era, was deserted save for a lone attendant whose tired eyes and quiet manner spoke of unspoken burdens. He purchased his ticket to a village called Zmayevo, a name that, even to an untrained ear, whispered of dragons or dark creatures of legend. The journey from the station to Zmayevo was a solitary one along narrow, unpaved roads flanked by dense forests. The trees, their bare branches clawing at the fading light, seemed to form a natural archway, a threshold between the ordinary and the uncanny. Alexander's heart pounded with a sense of foreboding as he recalled local lore, that in these parts, the boundary between the living and the dead was as thin as a winter's breath. When Alexander finally arrived in Zmayevo, dusk had already swallowed the sky. The village was a cluster of stone cottages with sagging roofs and shuttered windows that appeared to mourn a long-forgotten prosperity. A heavy silence hung in the air, broken only by the distant cry of a night bird or the rustle of wind through overgrown alleys. He checked into a modest guest house run by an elderly woman known only as Baba Myra. Her lined face and sunken eyes carried the weight of countless sorrows, and her whispered greetings were laced with a caution that chilled him. Over a meager supper of black bread and strong, bitter tea, she warned him in broken English. Night here, not like home, shadows speak in the dark. Beware the old church ruins on the hill, they hold memories best left undisturbed. Though her words should have deterred him, they only fanned the flames of his curiosity. Alexander spent a restless night tossing in a narrow bed, the wind outside murmuring against the window panes as if echoing a forgotten dirge. In the half-light before sleep claimed him, he thought he heard a soft whisper, a voice carried on the wind, almost too faint to decipher. It spoke of secrets, of sorrow, and of an invitation to delve deeper into the mysteries of this cursed land. At dawn, compelled by a mixture of scientific inquiry and personal longing for something beyond the mundane, Alexander set out toward the old church ruins that loomed on a distant hill. The route took him through narrow lanes overgrown with wild flowers and tangled briars, past crumbling stone walls that bore faint, cryptic inscriptions. The farther he walked, the more the landscape seemed to close, and around him a silent, sentient presence watching from the shadows. Ruins themselves were a crumbling relic of a once grand Byzantine church, its arches broken and its walls overrun with ivy. The atmosphere was heavy with ancient grief. As Alexander stepped inside, a cold shiver ran down his spine. In the dim interior, shafts of pale light filtered through holes in the roof, illuminating dust motes and fragments of faded frescoes that depicted saints and demons locked in eternal struggle. There, amidst the silence, he found a curious relic, a small, ornate box resting upon an altar in the ruined nave. The box was intricately carved with symbols that seemed to shift in the flickering light. Unable to resist, Alexander reached out and opened it. A waft of stale air and something inexplicably cold spilled forth. In that moment, the quiet of the church shattered with a sound like the rustling of dry leaves and distant, indistinct whispers that seemed to rise from the very stones. For a long heartbeat, Alexander stood frozen, the box in his trembling hands. In the gloom, shapes moved in the periphery of his vision, slivers of shadow that receded as soon as he tried to focus on them. A deep, resonant hum vibrated through the walls, as if the building itself were chanting a sorrowful litany. Was it the wind, or had the ancient voices of the dead begun to stir once more? Shaken by his discovery, Alexander left the church ruins with the mysterious box clutched tightly under his arm. The journey back to the village was marked by an ever-growing sense of disquiet. As he retraced his steps through the labyrinthine forest paths, every snap of a twig and every rustle in the underbrush set his nerves on edge. The trees, gnarled and ancient, seemed to lean in conspiratorially, their silhouettes contorting into shapes that might be human or beast or something in between. Upon returning to Zmayovo, he found the village cloaked in an eerie twilight despite it being only mid-afternoon. Locals avoided his gaze and spoke in hushed tones, and Baba Myra's eyes bore a look of fearful recognition as she saw the box. "It is the key," she murmured, barely audible. "A key to memories that should remain hidden." Her warning resonated with a truth that both terrified and fascinated him. That evening, as darkness swallowed the village, Alexander found himself unable to sleep. The box lay on the small table in his guest room, its surface catching the meager light in an almost hypnotic dance. Shadows on the walls appeared to stretch toward it as though eager to reclaim lost souls. And then, as midnight approached, the quiet was broken again by the soft, disembodied whisper of a name, his own name, carried on a breeze that defied the stillness of the night. The voice was not malevolent, yet it carried a deep, sorrowful longing that chilled him to the core. In the darkness, Alexander felt her presence at the foot of his bed, a silent, watchful figure whose features remained shrouded in inky black. The figure did not speak, but its eyes, if they could be called that, seemed to plead for recognition, for release from a burden spanning centuries. As the hours passed, the visions grew more vivid, fleeting images of a woman in white wandering through misty forests, a procession of spectral figures trailing behind her, and moments of quiet despair set against the ancient stone of ruined churches. Morning found Alexander restless and determined to uncover the meaning behind the relic and the voices that haunted him. With the first weak light of dawn, he sought out the village elder, a man reputed to be the keeper of local lore. In a cramped, smoke-filled cottage on the edge of Zmayovo, the elder named Stefan listened intently as Alexander recounted the previous night's events. Over a cup of bitter herbal tea, Stefan revealed fragments of a long-forgotten legend. Long ago, this land was steeped in a ritual older than memory. A sacred box was entrusted to the guardians of the church, meant to seal away a sorrowful secret, a promise between the living and the dead. But time, as it always does, eroded that promise, and the key was lost, until now. Stefan's eyes, clouded with both wisdom and grief, told Alexander that the relic might be the long-sought key to a curse that had plagued the region for generations. It was said that those who dared to unlock the box's secret would awaken the shadows of Bulgaria's spirits caught between worlds, yearning for redemption or revenge. The elder's voice trembled as he continued, "Be warned, traveler, some secrets are better left buried in the darkness." Though Stefan's words filled Alexander with mounting dread, they also ignited within him an obsessive need to uncover the truth. That day, he pored over faded manuscripts and brittle records in the local archive, a small, musty room in the town hall where the echoes of past tragedies seemed to linger in every crumbling document. Records spoke of forbidden rituals, of restless souls, and of a cursed promise made on a night much like the one he had just endured. With every page, Alexander felt as if he were peeling away layers of a dark history that had been carefully hidden beneath folklore and superstition. As the afternoon waned into a blood-red sunset, the box in his possession began to pulse with an almost imperceptible energy. Its carvings seemed to glow faintly in the twilight, and Alexander could almost hear them whispering secrets in a language older than time. In that moment, as the wind outside began to howl like a chorus of lost souls, he understood that his journey was no longer a mere exploration. It was a descent into a living nightmare where the boundaries between myth and reality blurred into an inescapable darkness. Alexander awoke from a fitful sleep with the relic burning in his pocket as if it were alive. Its pulsing light, once a faint beat, now resonated like a drum echoing the dark history of these lands. In the dim, cold dawn, he retraced his steps to the ancient church ruins. There, among broken arches and crumbling stone, he unscrewed the ornate box once more. The intricate carvings shimmered with a ghostly radiance, and as he traced the cryptic inscriptions with trembling fingers, a heavy foreboding settled over him. Inside the box, etched in an archaic script, were symbols that seemed to defy time. They glowed faintly in the morning light, each rune whispering of a ritual lost to memory, a forbidden rite sealed with blood and sorrow. As the wind stirred the brittle pages of an ancient manuscript he had found nearby, the relic pulsed in tandem with his heartbeat. In that charged moment, Alexander realized the box was more than a keeper of secrets. It was a beacon for something far darker. The inscriptions warned of a cursed one that had bound the souls of the departed to this land for centuries, a promise now fraying at its edges with each passing day. As twilight deepened into a velvety darkness, Alexander sought further answers from Stefan, the village elder who had first whispered of the cursed legacy. In a cramped archive room suffused with the musty scent of faded history, they pored over brittle manuscripts. The ancient texts recounted a clandestine ceremony performed under a blood-red moon, a ritual intended to bridge the realms of the living and the dead. This forbidden rite, carried out by a secretive circle of mystics, had gone horribly awry. Treachery had broken the pact, and in its ruin left behind a curse that had seeped into the soil of the Bulgarian countryside. Stefan's voice was both reverent and sorrowful as he explained that the relic Alexander now carried had once served as the keystone of that ritual. Without it, the elder intoned, the fragile bond between the worlds began to unravel, releasing the unrested spirits to wander freely. Outside, as the wind howled like a chorus of lost souls, the pages of the manuscript fluttered as if animated by unseen hands, urging them to confront the dark past. Alexander's mind churned with questions. Could the relic be harnessed to heal this ancient wound, or was it destined to unleash an even greater horror? In the days that followed, Alexander journeyed further into Bulgaria's forgotten heart. His path led him to remote villages where the remnants of the ritual's tragedy still haunted local memory. In a dilapidated monastery perched on a rugged hillside, he met an aged monk whose eyes shimmered with quiet despair. By the flicker of an oil lamp, the monk recounted the catastrophic night when the ritual had spiraled out of control, when a sacrificial offering sealed the fate of eternal torment. Under the monk's trembling gaze, Alexander pieced together a mosaic of loss and betrayal. The spectral woman, whose pale figure had haunted his dreams, emerged as the tragic victim whose death had bound the curse. Venturing back to the ruins of the church, he saw fleeting visions, a grand assembly of robed figures in the moonlight, a gleaming blade catching the light as it descended, and the agonized cry of a life extinguished too soon. For a suspended moment, the past and present blurred, and Alexander felt the full, crushing weight of centuries of sorrow. The relic posed in his hand a constant reminder that these dark memories were not confined to dusty pages, but lived and breathed in the cold air of the present. Night after night, the oppressive darkness of the Bulgarian countryside grew heavier around him. The relic, now a constant companion, revealed more of its eerie power with each passing moment. In the silence of the midnight hours, Alexander began to hear voices, whispers of those long gone, their tones laced with longing and despair. In an ancient graveyard, beneath weathered stone and gnarled oaks, spectral lights drifted among the tombstones. It was as if the dead sought solace or a final acknowledgement of their forgotten stories. One moonlit evening, while treading a lonely path near a ruined castle, Alexander encountered a small band of locals. They spoke in hushed tones of a clandestine assembly held each year on the anniversary of the cursed ritual. This secret gathering, shrouded in superstition and fear, convened in a hidden glen deep within the forest. Their purpose was to appease the restless spirits, to offer prayers, to make silent sacrifices, and perhaps to mend the fragile barrier between life and death. Intrigued and drawn by fate's inexorable pull, Alexander resolved to attend the next gathering, hopeful that the ritual might reveal a way to tame the relic's dark power. On the appointed night, a biting chill gripped the land. Dressed in dark, unadorned clothes, Alexander made his way through a labyrinth of forest paths toward the secret glen. The only light was the ghostly arc of a crescent moon and the pale shimmer of distant stars. As he emerged into the clearing, the heavy scent of incense mingled with the damp earth. A circle of figures cloaked in shadow and mystery formed around a low-burning bonfire. In the center of their circle lay an altar adorned with withered flowers, ancient candles, and relics eerily reminiscent of the box Alexander bore. The gathering's leader, a somber woman known as Mirena, met his gaze. Her dark eyes held the wisdom of ages, and when she spoke, her voice resonated like the tolling of an ancient bell. You carry the key to our curse. The relic is both a beacon and a burden. Tonight, we seek to understand its power and reclaim the balance between the living and the dead. As the ritual commenced, the circle's voices rose in a low, rhythmic chant. Alexander stood at the periphery, feeling the raw energy of their unified sorrow and hope. The relic in his pocket throbbed with an otherworldly pulse that synchronized with the hypnotic cadence of the chants. In that charged moment, he understood that he was not an outsider but an integral part of a ritual woven through generations, a ritual that might either lift the curse or deepen the darkness that enveloped the land. A sudden gust extinguished several candles, and the bonfire's flames twisted into ghostly shapes. Raina stepped forward, holding a weathered tome bound in cracked leather. "Tonight," she whispered, "the veil thins. We stand at the crossroads of redemption and damnation. Let the past speak, and may the shadows guide us to truth." As the chanting reached a fevered pitch, a palpable force swept over the clan. Alexander's heart pounded in rhythm with the voices, and the relic in his hand burst forth with an intense, blinding light. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze, as if the barrier between the mortal realm and the shadowed past had crumbled entirely. In that suspended moment, visions of the doomed ritual, blood, sorrow, and an anguished sacrifice flashed before his eyes, merging with the spectral forms that gathered around him. The ground trembled as dark, shifting silhouettes coalesced at the circle's edge, whispering in a language older than the mountains. Alexander was caught between terror and an inexplicable magnetism, pulled deeper into the web of forbidden knowledge. Mirena's eyes shone with an unearthly glow as she raised her arms, invoking the names of those long forgotten. Fire roared, its flames contorting into monstrous forms that seemed to observe the assembly with a cold indifference. Then, in a surge of power, the relic's light swept outward like a shock wave. The energy rippled through the clan, stirring the ancient trees and sending the gathered souls into a momentary collective hush. As the light faded, a deep silence fell, a silence heavy with the promise of irreversible change. Alexander, clutching the relic, felt an undeniable shift within him. The voices of the past had found their echo in his soul, binding him ever closer to the curse of these haunted lands. In the stillness following the eruption of spectral energy, the bonfire's glow softened and the relentless chanting died away. The air was filled with an almost tangible weight of silence that spoke of sorrow, secrets, and the inexorable pull of fate. Alexander stood at the center of it all, transfixed by the relic now resting in his palm, its glow subdued yet potent. Mirena's voice, barely a whisper yet resonant with ancient authority, broke the quiet. "The relic has spoken. Its light has revealed a path to both redemption and damnation." Her words, heavy with portent, echoed in the minds of all present. In that charged moment, Alexander felt the spectral visions intensify, each image of the tragic ritual, every face contorted by grief, etched itself into his memory. The curse that had long haunted these lands was not a distant myth, but a living entity intertwined with his fate. As the first sense of dawn crept over the horizon, the assembled figures dispersed into the night. Alexander, now irrevocably bound to the ancient sorrow of Bulgaria, took one last lingering look at the clan. The relic pulsed steadily in his grasp, a beacon of the past and a harbinger of what lay ahead. With the weight of the curse and the whispered promises of long-dead souls in his heart, he stepped away from the clearing, his path illuminated by the uncertain light of a new day. Yet even as he departed, the echoes of that night of the ritual, the spectral woman, and the gathering of the lost remained. They would follow him like shadows, a constant reminder that in the realm of the forgotten, every act of remembrance carried both the possibility of healing and the risk of succumbing to eternal darkness.